right, welcome back. So if you're following along, this is, I think, video number 9 of this historical bike build. And this is a part that I was really excited about doing, which was making this gas tank that was kind of elongated. Again, this bike build is supposed to be reminiscent, or at least inspired by, some of the early 1900s motorcycles, you know, be it Indian or Harley or what have you. Lots of manufacturers back then. But they're basically just bikes that these guys were slapping engines on, so I thought it would be appropriate. I wanted to make this tank out of a couple of old fire extinguishers, but the metal on the fire extinguisher was difficult to work with for whatever reason. I don't know if it was just pure aluminum or there was an alloy in there or just too thin. So my welding equipment and skills were not up to the task. So I thought I'd try these old common propane tanks, you know, for plumbing, you know, to sweat joints and stuff. And I had a bunch of these. They're crazy inexpensive, $3-4 full. So I had a lot of these that were old and empty or near empty. You got to be careful when you're working with this propane, you know, especially as compared to the gas tanks, because there's flammables inside here. So I made a little specialized tool to get the pressure relief valve out right here, which is kind of cool. It's on a little spring, and just used an old really common screwdriver, and with the Dremel cut a slot in there in order to get down inside the little hole and cut out that little pressure relief valve. And I also did the same thing with the main valve that you use to get the gas out. And then what I did is I filled it up with water, shook it around in there, completely emptied it, filled it up with water again. And I actually left some water in there before I started making the first cuts, you know, when the sparks would start flying. So just be really careful when you're doing that. But you just want to make sure that all that gas is out of there before you start cutting or grinding on there, because obviously it's you know, flammable, and you don't want any accidents to happen. This is fun. It's a hobby. It's a project. It's not supposed to be dangerous, or at least, you know, manage the risk. So the hope is you know, to use these propane tanks, which as a side benefit were just a tiny bit smaller, which I was having problems locating this 4-stroke engine. It's bigger than the 2-stroke that I was used to before on the prior build. So I'm glad I had and went with this smaller tank. So I'm just kind of showing here where that little pressure relief valve goes in there, and that front angle is going to fit in the front area of the bike there. So it's going to be nice and snug and compact. But it worked out better. It still wasn't perfect with the welds and stuff with these propane cans. You know, it just kind of makes sense. The manufacturers make this, you know, just thick enough so it's safe to be used for its intended purpose, which obviously some guy in Ohio is making a historical bike is not the intended purpose. But that's a lot of the fun things I like to do on my channel, and just in general, is I like to repurpose stuff. And, you know, especially really low cost stuff, this probably would have been thrown away anyway. You don't refill these, you just chuck them. So I wanted to try anyway to make this tank, and just out of stuff I had sitting around, which, again, if you're familiar with my channel, is a big part of the theme of what I do, is try to make stuff that's incredibly low cost, or just stuff that, you know, pieces, parts that are readily available at low cost. There is some other stuff I do that's a little bit more expensive, and we'll get into that later. But a lot of these hobbies and projects, the idea is just to, you know, build something by hand that's readily available and inexpensive. So I had this piece of metal also sitting around, and I just cut it to form. Lots of grinding. And you just cut it to form, and I'm going to tack weld it on here, and then later on you're going to see that the tack weld, you know, again, because you're putting this thicker piece of metal and trying to weld it onto the thinner tank, was a little difficult. So I ended up, you know, using some JB Weld on there to make a nice, you know, seamless and leak-proof tank area for the gas. So this front tank is going to be for the gas. And these, you know, 4-stroke engines and the 2-strokes also, for that matter, are pretty gas efficient. I mean, you know, you can go on the 2-stroke. I don't know about the 4-stroke yet, but I think it's even more efficient. But at least on the 2-stroke, you know, you're getting 80, 90 miles a gallon, depending on how, you know, strenuous you are with the accelerator, that kind of thing, and some other variables. But anyhow, the point is that for, you know, a gallon, you know, you're getting well over 70, 80, 90, 100 miles to the gallon on these things. So they're, you know, crazy efficient, and you can run them all day. They're super fun. So this tank, this size right here, will be plenty of gas. I might even build like a spare gas tank just in case. But for my purposes, this size will be more than enough gas to get me around town and just to have fun with it. So, but what I decided to do, because I was building this elongated tank out of 2 tanks, is I'm gonna have a storage compartment in the back tank. Did you just see that spider crawl across the screen? That was kind of neat. I didn't notice that until editing. So, so the front of this tank, obviously cleaned it out, made sure it was safe, kind of cut it to size with the grinder. Oh, there's a spider again. Check it out. And what I'm doing here is I'm just cutting a port for the gas nozzle. That's going to be, you know, the where you put the gas in the tank when it's permanently affixed to the bike. And I'm just building this out of you know, black pipe that you would use for you know, running gas lines, that kind of thing. Very inexpensive. I have this sitting around in my stock because I run gas line from time to time, and it's metal, so it will weld. So what I did is I just drilled a hole in the tank and then used this, I think it's a 22 and a half. It wasn't a 45, it was a 22 and a half. Just a 3/4 inch. This black pipe that you use for gas lines. I suppose you could also use the other stuff that you might use for like running like electrical lines or something if you want, the galvanized stuff. But like I said, I just had this sitting around, and it was in stock and convenient and also inexpensive. So what I did is I did put a length of pipe through this section here, so there's a little bit that sticks out into the tank, just to give it a little bit more secure of a connection, so it's not just a flush, you know, weld right there. And then just going around and welding it as best as possible with the flux core welder, which I'm trying to get a little bit better at using, but you know, again, this is the bottom of the barrel in terms of the welders out there that are available. I'm not skilled enough to use the ones that come with gas, although something tells me that if I got a better welder, maybe I just would be a better welder. So just, you know, again, a little tip on this welding stuff, you know, especially when you're dealing with thin metals, like this tank is really thin. You don't want to hold that trigger for an extremely long period of time. You will burn a hole through there, and then you got to try to build it up or something. And obviously, if you're trying to hold liquids or gases inside there, you don't want any holes, even like a little teeny tiny pinhole. And then you'll see the technique right here, and especially with these thin metals, you want to do a tack on one side of whatever project you're working on, and then go to the other side and put a little tack, because what will happen is if you don't do that, it will warp under the heat, and it will, you know, the other side will literally lift up the area or what have you. And you see how thin that metal is? I mean, I just burned a hole right through there. And I was trying to be really careful. I got this thing set on low. So yeah, if you're new to welding, you know, do a little tack on one side and a little tack on the other. and then you can even do like a star pattern, you know, just again, depending on whatever you're working with. But you want to balance out, you know, at least the first few tacks anyway to get it secure, because this thing, you know, generates all kinds of heat. I mean, that's what it does, is it makes an electrical connection, and it literally melts a little puddle of the metals, and you know, kind of glues them together, so to speak. Not actual chemical glue, but you know, a bond. So I did the best I could with the welding, and ground it down a little bit just to, you know, get the big nubbins off of there and stuff. But I mean, as you can see, there's still some gaps in there, and yeah, I tried. I mean, through editing, you're not seeing all the effort I put into it, but I tried and tried, and I'm getting a little bit better at this. But JB Weld has been around for a long, long time, and this stuff works great. And it's this type, anyhow, is rated for gasoline, so it should not degrade. And you know, I like to just use this as a spare little piece of you know, paper, a box that has a little bit of, you know, support to it, and you know, just some cardboard or corrugated, as those in the industry would correct me, as a spreader. You know, you can't go out and buy the little plastic spreaders, which would probably do a little bit better job on here, but I'm going to sand it down and do some auto body stuff on it anyway. The JB Weld was just to make the connections and to make it waterproof before I move over to Bondo and stuff and paint. So, you know, just squirt out a couple of equal applications from the 2 tubes of JB Weld. You know, one is the main tube, and the other one is like the activator or whatever. And, you know, I'm not a professional, so I use my fingers in a lot of stuff. I like to just make sure to smush stuff into those little crevices. So, you know, got the nitrile gloves out and tried to smush it in there as much as possible. I don't want any little gas leaks coming out. So this is the back portion of the bike. The 2 cans haven't been welded together yet, but you know, I just sketched this thing out with a magic marker, or you know, just a marker, and just freehanded the opening of where I thought a good hinge and you know, little door area would be, just to, you know, keep some stuff in there. I'll probably keep, you know, like a few little tools and stuff, just in case I need to tighten a bolt or something when you're out on the road, and a few dollars. It's always nice to have a little, you know, some change or a few dollars, just in case you know, you're out in the middle of nowhere and you break down or whatever. But you know, you could theoretically put your phone or whatever else you really wanted to put in there, ID, I guess, you know, that kind of thing. But here's the tank, and this is the back of the tank, which is going to be the elongated portion. I just wanted to show you the inside. That's what that looks like. So when you have the pressure relief valve, which is that stem, the longer, thinner one, and then the center one is where the gas would come out, like when you're doing your, you know, soldering and stuff. When you're actually using it, you screw on that the tip. So so that's what that looks like on the inside, and then you can actually see the little pressure relief valve still inside the main area there. So again, this is going to be the back area where the storage compartment, so to speak, and on the bottom it's just a tank, and then the manufacturer put kind of like a little flat area on the bottom. You can see right there that I'm, you know, grinding off because I'm going to do some welding, but there's a little band there of metal on the bottom that turns that round portion of the tank into a flat surface, you know, so if you're working on something as a plumber or what have you, you put it on the ground and it won't roll away on you. So they add that at the manufacturer, and I'm just gonna, you know, use that to my advantage. Line this up. I got the front tank kind of all ready to go in terms of the, you know, rough in type of stuff, and I'm just gonna go around and weld these 2 things together and make that elongated look. That historically inspired. This isn't going to be historically accurate. It's going to be historically inspired. I guess I should clarify if there's any purists out there. But you can see it's coming together. You know, the front tank is going to be the gas, and then the back is going to be that storage compartment. This metal back here, I think it turned out to be even thinner than the other metal. These manufacturers try to save as much money as possible wherever they can. But it turned out to be really thin. And so I tack welded it as best I could. And then I did some epoxy in the center. And that was just a clear mixture. I did that off camera. And just cleaning it out a little bit with the spray, with the compressor. But here it is, you know, mocked up. You can kind of get a better idea of where that's going to sit, and then the room for the engine in there. Got some more work to do on doing the opening for the door, and I'm going to do that outside on a different day. So you can kind of see from that previous clip there that there's just a gap, a few gaps actually, in between the straight top of the tank and that top bar, which if you recall, this was a girl's bike, and I just used that, which is now the top bar was, you know, the lower bar for the girls. So it has like kind of like a little bend to it, you know. So what I'm doing is I'm just, you know, sketching out on a piece of corrugated cardboard, just the rough area on a piece of metal I have sitting around. This is bed frame. I've used this bed frame on so many projects. I mean, go look at my channel. I even use it on my trailer build for the latches. This bed frame stuff, do not throw this stuff away. It's decent metal. And it's flat, already has a bend in it. I mean, sometimes it even already has the holes in it, you know, from where they made the connections, and you can use that. I used this on the bike earlier when I did when I converted the brake system on the front forks. So, you know, I just cut pieces to size and, you know, use that to attach the front calipers to the new disc brakes, which this, you know, bike was a bike that was on the side of the road for free and was probably every bit of 40 or 50 years old or thereabouts. Didn't have front disc brakes back then, but I wanted to put that on my bike, and I thought it was a neat little other project to do, so I put it on there. So anyhow, you know, go back to that video if you didn't see that part of the bike build, and that came out pretty cool. But the point is that this bed frame stuff, I use this stuff everywhere. And, you know, I just did a little sketch with the negative. So I got to fill that void in underneath the top bar of the bike. And it's going to go, you know, back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. You put it in, you know, you sketch it out as best as possible the first time. And, you know, you're just going to have to go back and forth between doing your first sketch, your first cut, and then, you know, your rough fits in there. So that's the process that we're going to see here. You know, so this front portion, I originally wasn't really too concerned about filling in the void, you know, for aesthetics. You know, again, I put that top bar on there and I welded it, and then also that front tube where my thumb was, we shortened that because those forks that are on this bike are not original equipment for the bike. We pirated those forks off of another bike that I pulled out of the trash, which was some promotional bike from Dr. Pepper. So the really thing I wanted from that bike was the front forks, because it had a little bit of shocks on them. See how they're a different color? You know, they're silver. Those have like the little shocks in them. Whereas this bike, the red bike, or maroon, was just a, just a very simple old Huffy type of, beach cruiser from 45-ish years ago. So I kind of wanted to fill that gap a little bit just for aesthetic purposes, but really my first intention when I was looking at that area is I wanted to give that front area a little bit more support, just because we made structural changes to the bike itself. Not only that front post, where my thumb is right there, you can see all the silver. That's all, that was chopped and welded together. But then, that top bar was lower because it was a girl's bike. So it's looking better here. I like it. I shortened the piece of scrap. I think that's maybe the one I'm going to go with. Yeah. So just prepping the area here. Whenever you're going to weld, you got to, prep the area. I don't know if you know that. Get all the old paint, all the old, grime and oils and grease and stuff like that. Just makes it easier for the weld, makes a nicer weld. And I'm going to go ahead and weld this piece. And just to save time for the video, because this one's a little bit longer, I did the same entire process for the longer piece behind that. So this is the front little piece, by the front tube, and then the entire length. There's another little piece there for it's about, I don't know, about 15 inches or so long, and I just thought that would look better in terms of having a nice clean look underneath the top of that tank. Maybe give the tank a little bit of more support, and also need to mount that tank on there somehow, probably with some straps or something. So I think it would probably help with that as well. But so watch the technique. I'm just going back and forth on this at first. Again, you always got to watch out, make sure it doesn't warp with the heat, and then you can go back and do your main filling in. But this bike build with the welding has been kind of a challenge, especially for me, because I'm a complete novice. I'm not a welder at all, or I don't work with metal for a living or anything like that. So I'm learning. But this bike is made out of some kind of like thinner polymer or something. So anyhow, it's a challenge welding the two different types of metals. So here's that other fin that I did off camera, just to fill that little hump in the void and make a nice straight line across there. That's going to be where the tank goes. Okay, so this part of the video is going to be primarily working on attaching the door to this storage compartment on the back part of the gas tank, and I'm just using other piece of old fire extinguisher tanks. I really like these. I mean, you can make a lot of cool stuff out of these fire extinguisher tanks, and I have a couple of projects in mind. I've seen people make lamps out of them, not necessarily these little dinky ones, but like some of the bigger ones. And I'm gonna make a fan that looks like a airplane out of a bigger tank that I have, and I salvaged a fan out of somebody's tree lawn. Somebody was moving out, so I salvaged a fan that actually works. It was just on the tree lawn. It had one little problem with it, so I'm going to make a really cool old school ceiling fan out of one of these old gas tanks that looks like, or resembles, or I guess inspired by, an airplane. So anyhow, with this project here, I love having this stuff around. This is just would probably be a throw out. This one happens to be a fire extinguisher that was probably just bad or something, and you just empty it out and clean it. It's simple. You can unscrew the top. If it's under pressure, just let the pressure out with the the handle, But it had basically the same curves and basically the same length and stuff like that as these propane cans. And I need to have like a little lip on the inside of this tank right here in order to prevent the door from just like, swinging back in. So, just cutting some, pieces of the fire extinguisher tank to size, and I'm going to drill through some holes there, and then do some rivets. So if you saw the previous video or one of the previous videos, I made a front light on here that looks like an old carbide, miner's lamp light, or at least it's inspired by that, and uses some riveting on that. Same process, you just drill some holes, and then select the proper size rivet, put it in the hole, and usually you can buy like a rivet gun that comes with a little assortment. You can see it on the bottom left-hand side of the screen. That's the orange handled tool is the rivet gun, and then the little clear box there is a multi-pack of rivets. I think they sell them together, like at Harbor Freight or your box store. I think these came from Harbor Freight, so they're just really inexpensive. Maybe, I don't know, $15 or something for the tool and the assortment of starter pack of 100 or so rivets. So, and I still have all of them, so they last a long time. But anyhow, I'm just roughing this out, and I drilled the holes on the tank first. And then, what I like to do anytime you're, matching up two pieces of material, I like to use the holes that you have in place on the main piece of material as your guide for the other piece. So I'm not drilling all the way through right now. I'm just marking. I'm actually going to get a board and do the the holes in the red material there to drill through. I'm just marking right now just a little bit, and they're not going to be perfect, but it'll get you pretty darn close for this purpose. And then later on, you can always go back and kind of like drill out just a little bit more if you need to. So you can see I took the interior part, which is going to be the stop, or the piece of material that prevents the door from swinging all the way in, and just drilling it out, just getting a common piece of 2x4 here, and that provides a little bit of support for the material, and then also a little bit of safety for yourself, so you don't drill through and clip yourself. So this riveting, pretty simple. We just did the holes, which you just pick out your drill bit and try to match it up to the size of the hole of the rivet, and then just put it through and squeeze a few times until you hear a little pop, and then it's done. It's riveted. So pretty handy. And I like that rivet especially for this project because back then they used a lot of rivets for some reason. I don't know why. Maybe it was just way more expensive to make screws or something than rivets. I don't know. But in my opinion, the rivet look is a little bit more historical. So you can see there, the hole didn't line up like perfectly. So you just give it, just one little pass through, and kind of like make it a little bit more wider there, so you can get the rivet hole through. It's fine back here. We're not making this area gas proof. It's just the storage compartment. But if you don't have a rivet gun, or if you don't want to go through this process or whatever, you could always use those self-tapping screws, that people like in the HVAC industry use all the time, and those work great. But those stick all the way through, so they self-tap, and then you got to screw them in, at least a quarter inch or something. And I didn't want that. That would be, sharp, and it would snag on something. So if I put my wallet or my phone or something like that in there, I didn't want to have screw heads, sticking through to the inside of the storage compartment. So for aesthetic purposes, and also, functionality later on using it. And quite frankly, I didn't want to reach my hand in there and scratch it, or have some other like little kid scratch himself or something like that. Either if he's trying to like look in there. Um, so form and function, I suppose, on this one. And I'm just repeating over and over again the same process here for the four sides of where this door opening is going to go. And we'll go back and paint it and stuff later. But this video is all about the the mock-up, and then the rough in and main build part of doing this gas tank. So just for purposes of making the video go a little bit faster, I edited out some of the portions where I'm deburring this metal. When you use that grinder, it'll create some burrs and some sharp areas and stuff like that. So I did go through at all times and deburred them with the grinder on when I could, or I think you just saw me with like just a file, which is just common tools that most people have or have access to, just to make sure that those little teeny tiny shards and burrs in there from the metal don't get you, because that would be one heck of a little splinter, getting those things in you. So again, the donor parts here from the fire extinguisher tank, they already kind of have the same radius as the propane tank here, which is nice. So the side portions here of the trim, or the stop, I guess you might want to call it. Those were the most challenging, but it really wasn't that challenging, to be honest. This would be an easy thing for you guys to do. But yeah, it was nice having that radius kind of match almost perfect, anyway, from the stuff that would have made it into the landfill. So all right, so I got all of the trim in there, the stop, so the lid of the tank door wouldn't fall in or push in. And then I'm going to go through with like a little silicone or something later on, just to give it like a little bit of a bead. Try to make it a little bit more weatherproof. But moving on, I found just a couple common and what I thought were kind of like more antique-y looking hinges from some old kitchen cabinets that we had, and pirated those off of the scraps, and cut them to size, because they're kind of bent and stuff like that, because they're meant for the carpentry kitchen cabinet application. So just cut off the flaps and drilling a couple of holes here for where I'm going to put the rivets through these handles in order to mount it on the tank. But I like these handles. They kind of had like an old school look to them. Kind of look like an old general store type of handle that you might see from years ago. They weren't modern at all, so I thought it would be kind of appropriate, because again, this project is supposed to be kind of inspired by the historical bike look. So I used some masking tape throughout this project just to hold pieces in place, but I think it worked out pretty good so far. Anyhow, this is the rough end, and this is going to be painted and have some like auto body filler and all that in there. So this is just really rough, but you can see it's coming together already. I'm really happy with it, and I didn't see the need to fill up this whole entire thing with gas. So I'm glad I did that little kind of toolbox or storage area there, and I think it looks nice. I'm going to cut off that little nubbin on the right and do something with that. I was thinking about maybe keeping it just kind of like maybe look steampunk, but that's really not the look I'm going for. But there you go. I think that looks pretty cool. And this is the close up of what it looks like. Very rough, but you can get an idea of all the work that goes into it. Yeah, check it out. It's going to look a lot nicer when it's all, finished, with auto body filler and painted and stuff. But you get the idea of what I've been working on. So, hey, as always, if you like these projects and if you're following along on this series, which I know is getting lengthy, hit that like and subscribe. It's a lot of fun making the videos, but it's rewarding getting that like and subscribe from you guys. So thanks a lot. Have a great day.